Hello again, everybody. This is Dan Clouser, and welcome back to the Journey of My Mother's Son podcast. Now I'm joined with Mark Connor, who's a boxing trainer and an author of the book, It's About Time, Millions of Copies Sold for Dad. Mark, thanks for joining me today.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it, and I'm very happy to be here.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it. Um, but before we get started, just introduce yourself in your own words. Who is Mark today?
Mark Connor is a literary pugilist, which is to say a boxer who's a writer or a writer who's a boxer. I don't fight anymore. I train boxers. Mainly right now, I'm just training what I refer to as recreational boxers, which is to say people who pay me as a personal trainer to get them in shape and to help them learn self-defense and just feel a little better. And then I'm also a writer. I call myself a literary pugilist because the only two things I've been really good at or excelled at in my life are boxing and writing. And so I started boxing when I was 10 years old on the east side of St. Paul, a place called the Mexican American Boxing Club. Um, um, I competed, I was competitive for 15 straight years. I didn't have a professional career, but three of the guys that I went to the National Golden Gloves with in my senior year of high school fought 11 world champions between them. And I was sparring partner with a couple of these guys who won world championships and was my last trainer. Trained uh, trained fighter to the IBF Junior Flyweight Championship of the world. I was his sparring partner up till he got to be um, world ranked in the mid 1990s, and at that time, I really learned a lot that kind of gave me the confidence to be a trainer. And I've always tried to put the boxing and writing together as somewhat of a living, but in the as I've done that, I've lived kind of a starving artist's life. So I've been a taxi driver. I worked 13 and a half years at a place called Anda Young. It's an Ojibwe word meaning our home center in St. Paul, which was Native American Indian homeless shelter for kids aged 5 to 17. And I did a bunch of other things. I worked on a fishing boat one time in Southeast Alaska, uh, a whole bunch of different jobs over the years. Just kind of surviving day by day, basically.
Yeah, I love it. So you said you were boxing since you were 10. How long have you been writing?
Uh, Seriously writing since I was 16.
Okay.
That's when, I mean, this book I wrote for a couple of reasons. One is because well, it was to deal with having lost my dad, and part of losing my dad on September 30th of 2019. Um, I don't think of myself as that old, but man, I had just turned 50, and I was looking at him, praying over him with my mom while he died, and realizing I had never got married, never had children, and we'd had an argument roughly 10 years earlier about my being a writer, and I had never published a book yet. And he never saw me do that. So I just said to myself, I have to do this right now. And uh, the book is a lot about his influence on my life. And when I was 16 years old, so my dad went to a high school in St. Paul, Minnesota called Cretin High School. That's Bishop Cretin. So it's not it's not like people who are Cretans, but it was Bishop Cretin High School, and its rival was St. Thomas Academy. Cretin is a little more working class, and my dad insisted when my brother and I went to junior and senior high school that he was going to send us to St. Thomas Academy, and I went to St. Thomas Academy, and my junior year I had a class called Writers and Writing, and there was the first semester, and Dr. Frank Blankley was the English teacher, and he had us do a assignment where we wrote a description of a place that was important to us. And I remember uh, the night before I turned it in, I had finished it and typed it up and everything, and I brought it to my father, who was sitting on his chair in front of the TV, and he looked at it and he read it, and I can still see his face, I can hear his voice, and he just looked at it and said, wow, this is great, Mark. This is really, really good. I can't imagine. You know, you were always a good writer. I always knew you're a good writer. You know, you've always been a good writer. And I kept saying to myself, when did you ever say that to me? You know, because I'd never heard him say that to me before.
Right.
Um, but the fact that he said it that one time had this major impact on me. And what I wrote was a description of taking the bus to the boxing gym and describing the neighborhood, then going to the gym, describing the gym real clearly. I was after I'd made the National Junior Olympics when I was 14. My coach was gave me the trust of giving me a key to the gym so I could go there and open it and close it myself. And so the guys that were 25, 26 years old who were there training, they had to leave when I was ready to leave. Stuff like that. He gave me that authority. So it was a pretty big impact on my life at that time. And the teacher, Mr. Blankley, when he when he was ready to give us back the papers with the grades, of course I got an A on it, but he was saying, "Gentlemen, I'm very impressed with everything you wrote, and there are some really good pieces. I'm going to read some to the class." And he started reading mine, and everyone knew it was me because I was the only boxer there, and
Right.
it was at that time. Plus, we were reading some of the Nick Adams stories, which are the short stories by Ernest Hemingway. And some of the stuff he wrote about kind of manly activities and stuff like that. And it was the first time I thought, maybe I could actually go to college. Maybe I could actually do something academic, and that's something that's more intellectual as opposed to figuring out something that was physical to do with my life. And so that's the first time I started considering myself to be a writer. And so that was the time when I first started writing. Seriously, I was 16 years old.
Very cool. And did you have aspirations to become published at some point?
Oh, always, yeah. So I mean, I mean, the only time I was actually fully employed as a full-time writer, was way back in 2001. I talk about this in the book a little bit. There was a local alternative weekly publication in Minneapolis that that I wrote for called Pulse of the Twin Cities, and they had a neighborhood paper that was kind of its parent paper called Southside Pride, which is three edition for different neighborhoods, monthly neighborhood newspaper. So I was the managing editor of the that neighborhood paper and assistant manager editor of the citywide publication. Um, it was kind of a tumultuous time at that particular publication. I was one of five editors that they had, so I only worked at that position as a job between January and the end of May that year. But I wrote freelance a lot of articles for that particular publication, and then some other ones. I've written, some boxing articles and stuff like that. I do. Right now, I'm selling the book out of the best way to get it is if you were to go to my website, boxersandwritersmagazine.com. If you add a slash books at the end of uh, that address, that takes you right to the books page on the website. And there's Lulu, Lulu, and also Amazon are the two websites, the two venues from which you can buy it online. Or if you're in St. Paul, Minnesota, you can always stop by Irish on Grand, which is on Grand Avenue off of Lexington in St. Paul. And I'm hopeful I'll get into more stores eventually. But so boxersandwritersmagazine.com, I do have a bunch of articles on there um, where I have covered boxing events and also interviewed different people. And I have a section called King of the Ring, named after my last trainer, Dennis Presley, and it talks a lot about the strategy of boxing and analyzing boxing styles and so forth. So, so I was always publishing articles and so forth, but I never had published a book until now. So I'm
Gotcha.
first time author, struggling to and pushing get get the publication more widely spread and if I'm open to if it's possible to get a bigger venue of if anyone wanted to do a collaboration with me, but right now it's published out of a small, newly formed independent press called Connemara Patch Press, and the easiest way to get it is through Amazon or Lulu, but that's boxersandrunnersmagazine.com/books is the website to go to.
Got it. So the book is actually a book of poetry. Did you always write poems, or was that something that came later in life? You know, you talked a lot about your articles and stuff like that, but was poetry
Right.
always something that was a thread of your life?
Okay, so poetry is a part of it, and it's something that I always have written. I've always, made attempts at and everything, starting around probably around age 16. But it's more than it's much more than a book of poems. So there are 20 poems in the book, but it's an autobiography that reads like a novel. So it's the jacket description is well, I'll just read real quickly part of the jacket description.
Sure.
Um, okay, so. It's About Time, millions of copies sold for Dad is a saga wrapped around a package of poems guarded by angels. With a narrative style that reads like a novel, contains a collection of poetry, and shares an autobiography, Mark Connor guides us through a journey of love, family, and life that is ours as much as his own, peaking at the point of merger of difference and unity. So I could read the rest of it, or I could just. So, following him from memory to memory, we feel the eyes upon us, defeat the empire of fear, embrace the kingdom of love, and find 10 minutes a day to be grateful. All the while, we celebrate the city of St. Paul with a friendly nod to Minneapolis, experience Irish influence in neighborhood life, rooted in Catholic cohesion, embraced by Indigenous America in the medicine wheel. We box the perfect metaphor with future world champions, love beauty in a moment of ambivalence, work on a fishing boat in Southeast Alaska, comfort a child in an American Indian shelter for kids, and guard American Indian buildings with guns and riots. Through it all, we honor Dad, mourning his death and remembering his love, sharing a story written for America, valuing fatherhood, defending family, encouraging marriage, and providing hope. So all the stuff that's described in there, I mean, some of these references like uh, we feel the eyes upon us, defeat the empire of fear, embrace the kingdom of love, and find 10 minutes a day to be grateful. So we feel the eyes upon us. There's a long poem in the middle called I Feel the Eyes Upon Me. So it's referencing these poems. Defeat the empire of fear, uh, that's a reference to it's a reference to something within a poem called Upon the Finishing of My House Fried Rice, which is uh, one of the poems that appears in early in the book. And so I call it uh, a saga wrapped around a package of poems guarded by angels. So the poems and the prose weave into each other. And they kind of wrap around each other. And there's this theme of guardian angels running through it because um, my father died, and I say I explain in the opening page. I'll just do it very quickly. I came up with the title of this book on September 30, 2019, the day my father died. Dad had been on life support since September 20, when he had a heart attack in a rental car in a Costco parking lot in San Francisco, California, 5 minutes from the airport, to which he and mom were about to drive to catch a plane home. I was supposed to pick them up at the Twin Cities International Airport. Mom had called me just after 3 p.m. as I bought a sandwich at the Jimmy John's on Grand Avenue in St. Paul. Mom and Dad had been sitting in that rental car discussing their great 4-day vacation, staying at the Marines Memorial Club in San Francisco. They were talking about how much they loved each other, how much they loved their two sons and their daughter-in-law, Kelly, my brother David's wife, and their two grandchildren, Liam, 15, and Caroline, 13. They were talking about how lucky they were and how great a marriage they'd had for over 51 years and how they couldn't wait to get back to the blessings of their family, friends, and life. Dad began pulling out of the parking spot and was struck with a heart attack, slumping over the wheel. Mom put the car in park and jumped out, yelling for help. Their guardian angels were watching over them. So I say their guardian angels were watching over them, and later on, I say, how can I say the guardian angels were watching over them when he died anyway? And I make a reference to I make a reference to Saint Joseph. So I talk about how my father, Saint Joseph, is considered the patron saint of a happy death. And my father, the way he died, they kept him alive with a defibrillator. There was a health fair going on at that Costco. So when my mom jumped out, and yelled for help, two two EMTs were there, and they kept him alive. And they got him to one hospital, and they actually decided they had to do a heart lung bypass operation. They had him on this machine, and they got him to the main cardiovascular hospital in San Francisco, and he was on life support for 10 days. So that was a Friday. That Monday, my brother flew down there, and he was there till Friday, the following Friday, and he had to come back. He's a public defender in St. Paul, and he just had to be at his job. And my mom called me to come down there and be with her on that Saturday night. And I was actually across. I was in St. Columba parking lot, which is I'd gone to talk to this Franciscan brother there, to ask for prayers and everything. Who, but St. Columba, directly across the street from it, is the house my dad grew up in, just in the Midway neighborhood of St. Paul. And I was looking at that. I was just facing the house that he grew up on. S- in the sitting in my car, basically on the playground that he grew up on, contemplating buying a ticket. I talked to a ticket agent on uh, an online ticket agent on the phone. I just hung up and was contemplating that ticket, and my phone rang. It was my dad's one of his best friends from grade school, whose wife was a retired ticket agent from Delta. He said, "Stop trying to find a ticket. We're buying a ticket for you. We're paying for it. I'm gonna come up and pick you up. We're gonna take you to the airport. You can have dinner with us, everything." And my godfather, Tom Safari, the uh, guy, another guy who grew up with my dad. He and his wife and my dad's friend Dave Bonnewell, God rest his soul, because he died almost 2 years ago now. He had picked me up, and the four of them, gave me a spaghetti dinner. They jumped in the car with me and they drove me to the airport. And I was there at 10:30 that night. And what I'm saying when I make the reference to St. Joseph is my brother was there. He played recordings of my dad's grandchildren in his ear, and I was there with my mom. So he had his family there praying for him while he died. And the there's no documentation of this, but the belief is that when Saint Joseph died, that Jesus and Mary were there with him. So he's a patron saint of a happy death. So that among other things that I refer to in this book with the stories that happen in there. There are a lot there's stuff I talk about that are kind of really kind of tragic kind of situations, or um kind of hard luck occurrences in my life that have happened throughout. And I'm not going to say them all because I want everyone to buy the book and read it. You got to read the book. But that's what I'm getting at with the whole idea that guardian angels are running through the story. You know what I'm saying? Um,
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So, what were obviously the book and kind of, finally making that decision to write the book was largely, you know, due to your father and his, influence on you. I mean, just what were some of the things that he was able to teach you about in life?
well, one thing is honesty, um, and just having some integrity. Um, he really gave of himself uh, all the time, and he was always working, and he was always there for family. And we didn't have a really big family. My mom really would have liked to have had a third child. It just wasn't in the cards. Um, and he was always there no matter what. He was always present. I mean, I could take a time to see. I was kind of guy. I was a boxer, and I always we're a pretty middle class family, right? And we lived on the greater east side of St. Paul, but the east of downtown, people refer to as the east side, but there's this one little pocket that's considered the east side, which is like a step over from the neighborhood where I grew up, where I first started boxing. In that neighborhood right now, I think it's got the highest percentage of convicted felons that lives in it. It's a real rough neighborhood. You know what I'm saying? But I always wanted to be on the edge of this kind of stuff. I always kind of wanted to have the reputation that I was a rough guy and stuff like that. Um, and so I had a tendency to hang around a little bit with guys that were, you know, might do a couple of things wrong, but I was never one to step all the way into that kind of a life. And I was really on a track that my parents had put me on to have good opportunities in life. And my dad was such a presence in my life that I couldn't I couldn't get away with stuff like that. I couldn't I he had to know where I was and what I was doing. And there are times I can think back on where I could have gone one day with this guy or one day with that guy to do this thing or that thing. And if I would have, something bad would have happened. And some of these guys I'm talking about, one guy I'm thinking about, he died. Um, I mean, the guy was 44 years old. He died in 2010 robbing a liquor store. Um, Another one of and a couple of these guys that I know of. I mean, and these are guys I knew from boxing. One guy, um, his little brother died in a drug deal, and so all that kind of stuff. I could have easily gone that direction if my dad wasn't there. And I look at people. So I worked over 13 years at this homeless shelter for for very vulnerable youth, and it's a Native American Indian homeless shelter, but it was open. Anyone who needed to be there could be there. So they weren't always Native American kids, but most of them were. And a big thing is father not being in the house, and not keeping the family together. And if people get divorced, I mean it's okay, but father's still got to be active in a child's life. It's an extremely important thing, and um that's one of the biggest problems I think that we have in our country right now is that people don't get married anymore, and or people do get married, but not as much. And people don't think that they have to have uh, mom and dad living in the house to have a family. I mean, there are a lot of people who just don't care about having a commitment when they do have children, and that's not to condemn anyone who has, but it's just that is the ideal. Be, just because we might not be able to meet the ideal, we don't get rid of the ideal. I'm saying, and that kind of structure is really important. And the fact that my dad was there, and he starting early on, whether it was going to when my brother and I first played t-ball to playing baseball, playing football, playing hockey. I mean, I started football, but after the first game, I quit because I had the chance to box. And I didn't do many other sports after I started boxing. But my dad went to the fights when he could go to them. Made sure I was at the gym, picked me up there a lot of times when I was a kid. Was there at my brother's games, and then he was also there when it came to the academic life. I mean, I remember I had trouble with my multiplication tables in third grade. Between third grade and fourth grade, that summer, my mom had been a former teacher, so she had the teenage girls, these two sisters, just come switch off babysitting me and my brother when my parents were at work. And my mom had made up this. She had a little plastic garbage bag where my babysitter would have me pick something out of it, a card out of it, and would say I would do this different kind of academic exercise for like a half hour every day or something. And the day before I was going to start fourth grade, my dad said, "Come out, stand up here by that same chair I said when he was reading that story I'd written when I was 16, and was all happy with me. Had me stand by him in his chair in the living room and recite 2 times 2 through 12 times 12." don't get any of them wrong. And I wasn't getting all of them. And he was telling me, well, you're not going to start fourth grade anymore. You're going to repeat third grade. And I, I, uh, I was kind of, kind of complaining about it and everything. My brother said, just, you said until you can recite those, you're not going to get, I'm going to go in, I'm going to tell the principal that you have to repeat fourth grade. I went back in my room and did it and came back and w was able to recite them in front of him. And that might sound like kind of a harsh thing, but he was just standing over me and making sure that you could get that done. And I think that that's something that you have to have in life. A father is usually the one of the two parents. Each parent gives something to the child. And men and women, from our differences, we bring something that's a different quality of the totality of humanity that that child needs to be exposed to while growing up.
Yeah.
That's kind of long-winded, so I'm sorry if that was a long answer there.
No, it's all right. No, there's definitely there's nothing wrong at all with tough love on occasion. I mean, I think that's, one of the things that we lack a little bit of in society today from when you and I grew up for sure. Um, so I love that. Um, Mark, is there anything that I mean, I'm sure we missed a lot, but is there anything that we missed before we start to wrap things up that um, you think would be important to the listeners?
Well, the book is yeah, I mean so it's only 86 pages in paperback form. So it's not that difficult to read. It's easy to get through kind of fast, but it's a bit deep. So there's a lot said in each page, and it's not just the poems, it's not just about my dad. It is about that. It's a lot about my life. I write a lot about boxing. So I didn't talk about some of the boxing experiences. And then, at the end I talk about as I'm mourning my dad's death, we had all the crazy things happen. We had the shutdown, we had the big riots that happened and everything. One of the elders in the Native community asked me to come out and help protect buildings. So I was with AIM, the American Indian Movement, armed protecting buildings. One because there's a Native American building across the street from the um, police station that got burnt down that also got burnt down. So they called people out to protect buildings. So there's some really interesting stuff happening in this story, and I talked a little bit about I talked about my I was telling you earlier about my father's parish where he grew up. I talk about the Irish influence in uh, the Irish influence and some of the Catholic background in the story, and it's really written uh, f- to express the values of love, family, and life and to give people hope and to give them encouragement. And that's what I really hope people get from this reading this book is that they feel encouraged, a little bit inspired from having read it. That's really what I'm trying to provide to people. Um, it's ultimately written as uh, as an homage to St. Paul and to the Twin Cities and to Minnesota, but really for America ultimately, because I hope that we can kind of keep ourselves together going forward and just remember who we are and respect each other and you know and I always have hope, so I hope I can express that to people and encourage them to do the same.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Mark, I know you mentioned a couple times where you can find the book, but just, one more time for the listeners, where can they get it at? What's if they want to reach out to you personally, to find out more about, you know, have you on another podcast or anything like that, how do they find you on the internet?
Okay, well, there's contact information at boxersandwritersmagazine.com, and the best way to get the book is go to boxersandwritersmagazine.com/books. On the website, you see the book page, and that's boxersandwritersmagazine.com/books is the actual book page. And that's got two venues in which you can purchase it. And if you're in St. Paul, Minnesota, go to Irish on Grand, it's Irish gift shop. Um, Otherwise, you can get it there, and you can ask for it in any bookstore too. It can get ordered, but the fastest way is boxersandwritersmagazine.com/books. I have a Substack called Irish Catholic Punch Drunk in St. Paul, and so you can look that up. Also. You can contact me at, I guess you could just contact me at writers, I'm sorry, writingboxer@gmail.com. So that's a
Excellent.
good way. All right.
Excellent. Mark, appreciate the time. That brings us to our final question. As you know, the subtitle of the podcast is Many Little People in Many Little Places, which comes from the opening lyrics of the Michael Franti song Gloria, which go, when many little people in many little places do many little things and the whole world changes. What's one of the little things that Mark does on a daily basis to make the world a little bit better place?
Well, I just try to be as respectful to everyone as I possibly can. And give them a smile, say hello, please and thank you, those little things. I mean, that's probably the simplest thing I do is or hold door. I always hold doors for people, always hold them open.
I do the same thing, and it's amazing how many people really appreciate having the door held for them. Like really, really appreciate it. And I'll hold the door for somebody if they're, 10, 15 feet away yet. I'll stand there and hold the door for them. And it is amazing how much people appreciate somebody doing that for them.
I do that too, and sometimes I feel a little guilty. I say, don't hurry," because
Right.
but I do that for men as well as I mean, I do that for women, especially like, she's pretty. Maybe she'll smile at me, but but I do that for men too because
Yeah.
it doesn't matter because I figure, man, it's just helpful.
Yep.
Just
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Mark, really appreciate you taking the time to join me today. For those out there listening, be sure to check out my other podcasts and blogs at journeymymothersson.com. While there, check out our Pay It Forward program where you can go on and purchase a copy of one of my books, and Sandy and I will donate it along our travels. It's a great program and a great way to just pay it forward. So, Mark, once again, appreciate the time. Wish you all the best with the book, and I think it's going to be a good read for anybody who grabs it.
God bless, man. Hey, thank you. I really appreciate it. I hope everything goes well for you, and maybe we'll talk again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.